Sige.
And a educational consultant here at Weld.com. I'm here to explain to you guys, per some viewer requests, about the American Welding Society's welding positions. So we're going to get it started, take a deep dive into these welding positions. Hopefully you'll be able to have a much more thorough understanding when we get done. Let's get started. In this episode of Weld.com, we're talking about those American Welding Society welding positions, common or industry standard welding positions. Many of those are identified in the D11 Structural Steel Welding Codebook. We have 5 basic joint types: a butt joint, edge joint, a corner joint, a lap joint, and a T-joint. Our T-joint is going to give us our fillet welds, where our butt joint will give us our groove welds. These other 3, the lap, corner, and edge, fall under either fillet type welds with their lap joints, and our corner and edge can have both or either a fillet or lap in there. As we talk about those 5 joint types, we have the butt joint, where we butt the 2 pieces up to one another. T-joint is where we stack one on top of the other. This is where we get those fillet welds. We move into a lap joint. A lap joint is going to be one overlapping the other. One overlapping the other, we would end up with a weld here or here. This is also used for spot welds or plug and slot welds to join 2 different plates together. And our corner, we can line up like this. There's different orientations. Here, 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 depending on the type of weld that's being applied to that corner, and if we're going to prepare that piece with some kind of a bevel. Our last is going to be our edge. Our edge is where we would stack the 2 next to one another, and we would be welding the edge of this up. It can either be this edge or this edge. Edge joint, we may leave these 2 just butted up, or we may put a groove on each one, pair them up this way, and we're going to weld down the edge. All right, now that we understand the 5 joint types, we're going to talk about how they're applied. We're going to start by talking about that T-joint with a fillet weld. When we talk about fillet welds, we have 4 positions. We talk about fillet welds in the 1F, 2F, 3F, and 4F position. Flat, horizontal, vertical, and overhead. So the 1F, we're going to start here. That 1F is going to be at about 45 degrees on the horizontal and vertical member. Right? It's creating a little trough here. So when I take my weld, again, stick, MIG, TIG, and I come in here to apply my weld, it will self-level from side to side. All I got to do is make sure I point down inside that joint and travel nice and consistently. And it will give me a nice flat weld leveled out on both sides. Easy way to check is I can just lift it up and make sure that my toes of my weld are equal as I look down this. At 2F, I'm going to have 1 horizontal and 1 vertical member. I'm going to take that horizontal member and vertical member, and I'm going to come in here with my stick rod, MIG gun, or TIG torch at approximately 45 degrees. And I'm going to work my way across, whether I'm pushing or pulling, depending on the process. Now, I can check and make sure that my toes are laying in there very equally and my angle is right by simply rolling that plate to the 1/2 position, and I will be able to see then that the height of my toes is coming out as far as it's going up. The other thing you could do is picture yourself with your speed square coming in here just like this. And be getting you set at the right angle for that. So you get that weld in there. That was the 2F position. We moved into the 3F position. This is where our hands were looking at us like this. Remember, when we stepped up to the 3F, we have to determine whether we're going to weld vertical up or vertical down. A vertical up in the 3F position, I would start at the bottom of my plate, and I would manipulate that weld uphill. Make sure you check your welding procedure or the thickness of material, your process, Strength of the weld, a lot of things come into play. But a 3F vertical up is going to look like this. A 3F vertical down, I will start at the top and I will work my way downhill. Finally, we have that 4F. That's that overhead weld. We have one horizontal and one vertical again, though this time our horizontal member is on the top, where the 2F was on the bottom. Very similar to our 2F weld, though I will get in here with that 45 degrees. Now, if you are struggling with this, you can check it by just holding the speed square up to make sure that your torch is coming in at the right angle. So you're going to work your way then across, pushing or pulling based on your process and your manipulation choice. Now, this is called overhead welding. Again, this does not mean it has to be over my head. I could be underneath the table and reaching up to get that weld, and we're talking about the axes of the weld being an overhead position or 4F. Just like with the 1F, the 2F, even the 3 and 4, I can hold these back to that 1F position at 45 degrees, and I can make sure that my weld has equal length toes and that it is going in properly and I've got the right angle for my electrode. All right, now that we understand how the fillet welds lay out, let's take a look at the groove welds. This is going to be our butt joints. We're going to see groove welds in. Groove welds are going to be a 1G, 2G, a 3G, and a 4G. That G stands for groove. So we've got a groove set up here. That groove, our 1G position, will be coming in perpendicular. I'll be perpendicular. So I'll be coming in here and I'll be welding, pushing or pulling, depending on our process, with my torch, TIG, or stick rod perpendicular to that joint. So we'll be working away like this. There is a little bit of a loud variance to stay inside of a 1G, but we're pretty much going to stay right here about 0 to 10 degrees. The 2G position, I'm putting my plate so the weld axis is horizontal and the plates themselves are going to be vertical. So I have a vertical plate with a horizontal weld axis. I'm going to come in here and weld this just like this. Remember, with this type of weld, you're fighting gravity just a little bit. So you want to make sure that you push the weld up just a little bit into the groove with just a very slight upward angle as we're working on this. The 3G, I simply rotate the plates so the groove itself is going to be vertical. I will be making a vertical weld. This is where we start getting into that vertical up, vertical down again. In the 3G vertical up, I will start at the bottom of the plate and I will work my way uphill. Some manipulation may be helpful in this application. In a 3G vertical down, I will start at the top of my plate and I will weld down. I need to make sure when I'm doing that I stay on the leading edge of the puddle. Otherwise, I trap it and I totally lack penetration inside of there. But that is very process specific. Our 4G, again, that's our overhead. Our plate has gone back to being overhead. That doesn't mean it's got to be over my head. That just means the axis of the weld has moved to where I'm going to be welding in this position. My rod, stick, MIG, or TIG will be pointed up and I will be welding overhead or 4G. I could be lying underneath the table and just having to reach up from the bottom to get this weld in here. We have the flat, horizontal, overhead, and vertical. And not only are we given a little bit of leeway in the angle we're at, we're also given just a little bit of rotational leeway. You do have to make sure if you are a certified welder following a welding procedure that you meet the minimum qualifications needed for these different positions. Fillet welds and groove welds are very similar in the angles of rotation that we are allowed. And the book even specifies our groove and fillet weld designations As we look at in the D11 Structural Steel Welding Codebook, we have both groove and fillet weld applications. And as a welder qualifies in those positions, the positions they are qualified to weld in. It is very common for a welder to take a 3G, 4G test in a groove weld, especially on something like a 1-inch plate, because the plate thickness and those two positions will qualify then for flat groove, horizontal groove, vertical groove, overhead groove, flat fillet welds, horizontal fillet welds, vertical fillet welds, and overhead fillet welds. By taking that 3G, 4G test, it qualifies in all of these applications.
Okay, hindi ibig sabihin ikaw ay welder sa shop, qualified ka na mag-weld ng mga 4G, 5G, 6G. Okay? So lahat po 'yan kailangan pagdaanan nyo ng exam. So pag kayo ay nakapasa, then that's the time na pwede kayong tawagin. 5G welder, 4G welder, 6G welder. So doon lang kayo pwede. Hindi ibig sabihin na kayo ay nag-welding ng mga doon sa shop ay kayo ay qualified agad-agad, automatic. So hindi po, ha? So you really need to take the exam. So kailangan talaga mapatunayan nyo na kayo ay capable of welding 6G up to 6G kung kaya. So that's the time. Yun lang pwede kayo mag-welding. Okay?
Does not qualify us though in pipe under 24 inches, so we do have to make sure that if we're using plate or pipe, we're making sure we meet those qualifications with a weld cert test. We just got done discussing the fillet welds and groove welds on plate. Now we're going to move on to pipe. Pipe, we're going to keep that 1G, 2G, we pick up a 5G and a 6G in this application. We're going to talk about that 1G. I'm going to use this marker.
So dito, yung 6G is yung pipe. Okay? Kadalasan kasi sa mga tulad doon sa oil refinery, puro mga tubo. So yun yung madalas na wini-welding. Okay? So hanggang 6G ang qualification na dapat marunong ka. So pag bago ikaw makapag simula, kailangan may qualification exam ka muna. So hindi ibig sabihin na test the qualified ka, pagdating mo sa company ay pwede ka na mag-start. So titingnan pa rin nila kasi meron silang QC to check kung talaga bang ikaw ay totoo na magaling sa 6G. So meron yan tinatawag na X-ray, okay? So in X-ray, yung winelding mo para malaman kung pati ba yung loob ay walang mga porosity. When we say porosity, yan yung mga maliliit na bilog-bilog sa loob ng welding o ng metal na hindi mo makikita visually sa labas. Hindi mo makikita kasi nga po nandun sa loob. So ginagamitan siya ng non-destructive testing, so NDT. So X-ray sigurado makikita yan sa film. So napakalakas ng X-ray na yon kasi bakal kaya niyang makita kung meron nga bang mga butas ang welding nyo. So doon pa lang malalaman kung ikaw ay pasado o hindi. And doon ka lang pwede magsimula pagka nakapasa ka. So kadalasan ang nag-ooperate ng mga ganyan is mga Koreano. So kung kayo ay mapapadpad sa Bataan, Koreano ang mga boss nyo doon. Okay? Sila ang dahil sila ang mga boss doon. Sa tagal na nila dito sa Pilipinas, ayan, sila ang mga nagmamanage ng mga shutdown. Pag nag-shutdown ang refinery, so merong aayusing mga tubo. Ayan, dyan sila pumapasok. Ayan ang mga business nila doon. Kaya mga pangalan doon, mga Koreano din ang pangalan ng mga company. Okay, so continue natin.
As my example, whether it's our stick rod, MIG gun, TIG torch. Our pipe is going to be mounted horizontally, and my weld is going to be coming in from the top, as you can see here. But as you see, I've got this mounted up in a positioner. And so when I put my foot down, the positioner is actually rolling the pipe for me. I don't have to try and keep up with the weld.
Okay. So eto, maganda yung placing. May machine na tumutulong para i-welding siya. Pero sa actual, wala pong ganyan. Okay? Ikaw mismo mag-a-adjust sa pipe. So either nakatayo na siya o nakahiga, ikaw po ang bahala. As a welder, hindi ka pwedeng pumili ng position na, sir, ito lang ang kaya ko kasi pagdating sa 6G, so hindi ka tatawaging 6G welder kung yung ganyan na position ay hindi mo kayang i-weld. So, depende dun sa kung ano lang ang kaya mo. So, hindi ka mabibigyan ng mga trabaho when it comes to 6G kung sa 6G ay hindi ka marunong. Okay? Kasi yung mga tubo connection, hindi lang naman yan 1G. Okay? So, iba-iba ang positioning. Pwede may overhead. Okay? Madalas, may overhead yan. Okay. So, kaya as a welder, kailangan yung abutin at least yung 6G matanggap.
I just set my speed rate, and I would roll the pipe while putting the weld down. Takes a little bit less operator skill. You just got to make sure you get your settings dialed in so that your rotational speed of your positioner, and whether it's your amperage or your wire feed speed or your ability to TIG weld, that you're all dialed in. You hit that pedal, you're off to the races. Lay down a nice looking weld. 2G on pipe. The pipe will be mounted vertically, but the axes of the weld here will be horizontal, just like we had on with the plates where it was a 2G weld. We've got that weld axis is going to be horizontal. This will not move though. It stays in this position. So I'm going to get out my welder here, weld rod, and I'm going to be coming around either left-handed or right-handed. Make sure you work on both skills. All right, we've covered the 1G, pipe is rolling, the 2G, where the pipe is horizontal. Moving into the 5G. The 5G, the pipe is going to be mounted horizontal with the axes of the weld being vertical. Now remember, this one we had to determine whether we're going vertical up or vertical down with our progression. In our vertical up, more common, we're going to be starting on the bottom with an overhead weld, transitioning into a vertical up weld, and finishing off with a flat weld across the top. In the vertical down, we're going to start up here at the top. We're going to be working our way downhill. So we're going to go from flat to vertical down to overhead as we complete this weld. If we're doing boilers and pressure vessels, high pressure type, that's commonly going to be done in a vertical uphill. If we're doing low pressure, oil and gas type lines, that will be done in a downhill manner. So our AWS here is our 5G. The pipe is mounted horizontally, and we just have to weld uphill or downhill around the outside of this pipe. All right, the last position we've got here in pipe is that 6G position. The pipe is actually mounted at 45 degrees. You can check that either with your level or your speed square. You come off your table, make sure that you're at 45 degrees. It stays fixed here. You're going to have to, just like your 5G, weld from the bottom up or the top down. Again, that's going to be determined whether this is a 6G vertical up or a 6G vertical down. 6G vertical up, we're going to start down here on the bottom, come across and up and over the top. 6G vertical down, you would be starting at the top, coming across, down, and finishing through the bottom. Now, it does depend on the procedure that you're following. 6G is typically the hardest weld test that somebody's going to take, because as we look at the American Welding Society's different code books, If you pass a test in the 6G position, typically qualifies you for the 1F, 2F, 3F, 4F, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 1G, 2G, 5G, and 6G pipe applications. And that's why this single position is used to qualify the most for a welder taking a welder qualification test. Again, make sure you practice welding right-handed or left-handed, because you never know. You're going to be able to get inside that joint, make that weld. One fillet weld that applies in the pipe application is called the 5F fillet weld. Now, a fillet weld on pipe to plate in this position would still fall under the 2F. However, if I'm welding a pipe to a plate or a flange where this is fixed and I'm going to have to start on the bottom, work my way up, or start on the top and work my way down, that would be a 5F fillet weld. This is a specialized fillet weld using to join flat surfaces to round surfaces, usually in the pipe trays. Pipe and tubular test. Remember, you look at a 6G test. A 6G test qualifies us in all positions with one test on plate and pipe in both groove and fillet weld applications. That's why that's such a popular test in the industry. Something slightly more representative of what you would encounter in the field, though, would be a 2G, 5G, because those are the welds you would typically encounter. And if you took a 2G and 5G test combined, that would also qualify you for the flat, vertical, and horizontal. That does not qualify you, though, on the 6G application. And that's why that 6G application is used so frequently in industry as the go-to test. It covers you for everything. Now that we've covered all of those joint types, fillet weld types, groove weld types, pipe weld types, applicable welding codes, it's time to take all this new knowledge, don your PPE, and go make some money.
Okay, so at least na-discuss natin yung position kasi para po may idea kayo. So what you need to do is i-read na lang ulit. Gagawan ko yun ng additional notes, idadagdag ko dun sa binigay ko sa inyo para kahit papano may titingnan po kayo. So dito ako kukuha sa video, ilalagay ko dun sa notes para kahit papano mas malinaw yung presentation, kung saan may picture. Okay, so for now, welding position, okay? Bakit po hindi kayo nakakapag-prepare ng report sa SMAW? Anong problema? Kahit hindi hindi sunod-sunod, kailangan ma-discuss kung sino po yung ready to present, mag-discuss na po para hindi po kayo masasayang yung oras natin kasi baka matapos yung di ba ngayon is midterm niyo po, tama? Okay, so kailangan mahabol tayo ng konti. Okay? So hindi muna tayo makakapag midterm. Ayusin muna natin itong mga nauna na nating discussion para yun din naman ang ibibigay ko sa inyo. Kung ano yung nabigay ko, yun na lang muna doon ako kukuha kasi hindi ko naman pwede ibigay kung hindi naman natin napag-usapan. So kawawa naman, baka mamaya walang may sagot. So for now, welding position muna, then ayusin ko lang ulit yung notes, then isi-send ko po sa inyo. So, pwede ko na siyang isama doon sa magiging exam kung sakaling ay matapos ko na. Okay po? Any question dito sa weld position?
Sir, may tanong sir.
Yes po.
Yung sa sir, yung sa pipe sir, yung 1G tsaka 5G sir, Di ba po yung 1G pares silang parang nakahiga, sir? Kasi yung 1G, yung 5G pala tsaka yung 1G, sir, pares silang parang nakahiga. Tapos, sir, yung 1G, parang pwede mo siyang maikot-ikot. Yung 5G po, nilalagay mo siya dun sa parang device na umiikot-ikot. Dun sa 5G po ba, hindi po ba siya pwedeng ilagay doon? Sa parang mechanical device na yun na parang nakakaikot.
Pakiulit nga. Yung last part mo, medyo hindi ko alam kung malayo yung boses mo sa mic or what.
Hello, sir. Ito,
Yes.
sir, okay na, sir.
Yan.
Yung sa ano po, yung 5G tsaka yung 1G, sir, sa pipe. Di ba, sir, parehas po silang nakahiga? Kaso yung 1G, sir, parang nakalagay siya dun sa mechanical device, sir, na parang umiikot-ikot. Ganun, sir. Yung sa 5G po, ba di siya pwedeng ilagay dun sa parang mechanical device na iikot-ikot, sir, para mas mapadali yung welding?
Okay. When it comes to position, kaya siya tinawag na ganun is para doon lang talaga siya. Kasi alimbawa, kung yung test piece ay kaya mo naman galaw-galawin, so hindi na siya yung position na tawag sa kanya. For example, 1F. Pag yan ginalaw mo, depende sa gusto mo, hindi na yan 1F. Naintindihan ako?
Yes po, sir. Yes po.
Oo. So kung ano yung tawag sa kanya, at ano yung position na nakalagay doon sa pangalan niya, so yun lang yung tawag niya. Kung babaguhin mo siya, kung kaya mo namang baguhin siya manually, wala namang problema. Ang sinasabi lang dito is kung ano ang tawag doon sa position. So nasa sayo na yan kung kaya mong galawin yung test piece, why not? Wala namang problema. Unless kung magte-take ka ng exam, hindi mo talaga pwedeng galawin. Halimbawa, magte-take ka ng exam na 6G, bakit mo babaguhin yung position ng 6G? Hindi na yun magiging 6G. Kasi according to this, okay, pag nakapasa ka ng 6G, marami kang qualification na pasado ka na. Kasi yung 6G, yun yung pinakamahirap. So pag yun napasa mo, di pasado ka na sa 1. Low, sorry. Yung pag-change mo ng position ng 5G, wala namang problema yun, di ba? Kung hindi naman yung trade test. Pero kung trade test yun, wag mong gagalawin yung position. Kasi doon nga aalamin kung yung ganong position ay kaya mong i-weld. Kung ikaw ay nakapasa ng 6G, so marami ka ng position na mapapasahan dahil yung 6G na pinakamahirap, napasa mo, so baliwala na yung mga 1G, 2G, 3G, pasado ka na automatic doon. So yun ay kung may exam lang naman. Pero kung araw-araw na ginagawa mo, pwede mong baguhin. Kung kaya mong baguhin yung position ng wini-welding mo o yung ginagawa mo, bakit mo papahirapan sarili mo? Di ba? Pero ang pinag-uusapan lang dito, dapat alam mo yung pag-welding ng 5G hanggang 6G. So pagka ikaw ay pasado na ng 6G, wala naman na sa'yo mag-question na, oh, gusto ko 6G lagi gawin mo kasi yun ang pinakamahirap, doon ka qualified. So bakit mo papahirapan yung sarili mo? Pwede mo namang galawin yung material kasi hindi ka naman na mag-exam, pasado ka na di ba? So ganun lang naman yun. Ang pinag-uusapan lang naman dito is yung position. Pag hindi naman siya exam, normal working days, gawin mo kung anong gusto mong gawin dyan sa position ng welding mo. Wala naman sa'yo magko-question. What's important is magawa mo siya ng maganda na walang magiging porosity. Di ba? Nagigets po ba yung
Opo, sir.
Yes.
yung lesson? Hello, nakamute pala.
Opo, sir.
Wait lang, nababa ko. Nagets na. Okay. May question pa po ba? Yung iba po? Yung iba medyo late na nakapasok. May concern pa po ba sa welding position? Wala na?
Wala
Okay.
naman po ata.
Wala naman na. Oo. So, gagawin ko na lang siya. Dadagdagan ko yung notes na naibigay ko sa inyo para kahit papaano mas related dito sa napag-usapan natin. Doon ko na lang sa video screenshot, then iayusin ko dito. Send ko today. I-send ko today. Okay? So, for now, welding position lang muna para kahit papaano hindi kayo na stress na maraming pinag-aaralan. Okay? What's important is tapos na tayo doon. Ang kailangan na lang is to assess kung naintindihan nyo ba. Okay? So, siguro, kung matapos ko ngayon yung quiz dito, isend ko na rin. Pero kung hindi, so next meeting ko na isisend. So, naintindihan po?
Yes po,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, so for now, open cam. Ayan. Magpahinga ako kasi alam ko 5 pa naman yung klase natin. Pagod sa trabaho. Okay, so open cam. Screenshot lang tayo dito. Smile. 1, 2, 3. Ayan. Send ko today yung notes para kahit paano mas marami kayong makita na handouts. Okay po? Sige, kung wala na po kayong question, thank you very much. Pwede na po mag-leave yung may concern na iwan po.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po.
Sir.
Thank you po.
Shut po, sir.
Apo.
Thank you, sir.
Apo.